Alrighty folks, want to welcome you back to another video from Yates Computers Tips and Reviews. This year is Into the Rabbit Hole year is what I'm calling it. And that's because you get into some of these things and they can get pretty deep, can get pretty wild. And the Hyper-V is the subject of these videos. So for these videos I wanted to cover actual screenshots, so people can actually see what is actually on the screen. The other videos basically were educational, would help you walk you through a lot of the issues that if you come across. So with Hyper-V, you can actually install it. I actually have it pre-installed, but easiest way is you go to Program. You want to add the programs and features to your computer. Turn Windows features on and off. You have to have Windows Pro to be able to enable this. It is not available on the standard editions. So that's one of the little issues that you have if you want to run this. You have to wait for the box to load. And in here, I've already got it checked. It's the Hyper-V. You want to make sure you have both of these checked. Also, one of the other options you might be looking at is doing the sandboxing. Sandboxing I also have enabled. You can actually just check the box. You click OK. It'll search for the files. It'll download files that you need. And then it will restart. It'll request you to restart your computer. After that, basically you hit the Windows S. I put in Hyper-V, found the shortcut, created the shortcut, put it on the desktop. Takes a little bit. Hyper-V. Now this is pretty much the basics to installing Hyper-V on your computer. Once this comes up, it actually has some pre-installed choices for you to choose from. In here there is quite a few little options you can hit to enter a local location. It'll tell you what kind of Windows, if you have an ISO or anything of that sort, or an installation media from another company, you can install that. You can hit more options. This is actually how you name your installation, because you might be installing, let's say, server software 2019, 2021. You might be installing 2 or 3 of those editions on here. You may need it for a security server, for DC, for email, for whatever purposes you might want to do it, as a media center, as a storage device, whatever you wanted to do. It might not be Windows based, it might be another program, another operating system style. You can install that, you can label it. In here it has the default switch. Most of this you'll probably leave alone except for your naming, and then you'll create it. When you click create, if you don't have these original ones that are on here, it will have to download that file. I have that going right now here. It is actually downloading that image so that I can show you how easy it is to install. So basically, all you really have to do is create virtual machine. Once that's downloaded, it's going to look at that image. It's going to verify that that image is good. It says creating virtual machine. It'll create the actual virtual hard drive location. It will be on your C drive location. You can actually choose with some other installation paths. If you go in there and you install, you can choose exactly where you want it to be installed. So you have another hard drive in there and you have a D drive and an E drive, or you have it partitioned where you have additional drive letters. You can actually save the virtual drives to those other drives instead of on your C drive. Some of the benefits to saving it on your C drive is if you want to do backups, it's easier to do the backup of the entire C drive. Maybe you don't want to back up the C drive and you only want to back up your virtual machines. So that's another variable there, that you can put it on a D drive or E drive and back up just that drive that has all of your virtual machine information. So these are some of those little variables that come in that I thought were very interesting, that really brought a whole new light to some of this on what you can do, what you can't do, some newer planning concepts. Because if you have a computer that has a smaller hard drive and you have a secondary drive on there, that you can still run these things because you have a secondary drive. It's not all going on your C drive. You don't have to worry about your boot records. You don't have to worry about any of those things. This can handle it. This system is a little slow. The other systems I've run them on, it's fairly fast. This process did not really seem to take that long. But I wanted to show this full entire process so that you can actually see what's involved. There's not too much involved if you go through a quick setup. This is basically the quick setup. After that, I'll go through and probably show the custom setups. The only reason I'm doing the quick setup right now is because that installs all the basics. After that point, you go into the image, the settings, and you customize those settings for what you want. These were a lot of the things that I had to research and figure out, like, okay, I want this system to be set up to do this and to do that, and you know, I need 3 virtual NICs, I need 2 virtual NICs, you know, I have 5 NICs on the system, but I only need 2 on this system, but I need 3 on this system, and which ones are the 5? You figure out really quick how easy that is, but it kind of gets complicated just due to the volume. But it's really not that hard once you've done it. You start to realize, oh, this really looks hard, but it's not that difficult once you get the base down. And I will show you some of that. I've done some smaller little videos that I might add to some individual videos. So once this is done, as you can tell, there's not much to do once you hit the install. And then basically that's what it comes up with. Let's connect or edit. You can go into edit. Now, this edit is the virtual environment for that very specific OS. So this is basically the OS view of Hyper-V. I'll go back to that, but this is, again, the OS view of the virtual operating system. So let me close all that out, because that will actually get you ahead of where you actually need to be. Once you install that, close that out, go back to your Hyper-V. When you open up Hyper-V, that's your first look, your computer name, And then you have your virtual machine there already. Now, you can go in here, right click on it, you can connect to it, you can go to settings, you can start, checkpoint. What you need to do before you go into any of that is go into this setting. I've already got some set up. I've done a little video, but I want to go back through this from scratch. Let me remove these. They're very easy to add, remove. If you want to change settings, if you need to change some stuff, you apply it, boom. This was one of the factors that took me the longest time. You are pretty much done with Hyper-V information. Basically, you go in here, let's continue with basic Hyper-V. How you run this, how do you use this. That's basically it. Other way you can go through is you click new. You click virtual machine. In here, you have all the options that'll walk you through. You hit next. What do you want it to be called? What do you want to name your virtual machine? Generation wise, you can read through, choose what your hardware is. Memory. What memory do you want set up? Do you want dynamic memory? Virtual memory? Your connection. By default, when you install this, this is what you're going to have. You're going to have a default network switch. And this was the interesting concept. It's a switch. It is not a NIC now. It is now a virtual switch. I will get into that when you get into the network configurations. So you hit next. This will actually say what's the name. This is the name that it's going to be saved under. This is actually where your virtual hard drive is going to be. This is where I mentioned if you have a D drive or an E drive or whatever you want, you can scroll down, click on it, save it to where you want, so it's not necessarily in your C drive. It is actually in another location. What sizes? You have a lot of that options. Your installation. If you're installing, how you're installing, where it's installing from, if it's on a server, boot up media, USB, whatever, an ISO file, you can install that. So if you have server ISO, if you have a Windows 95 ISO, 98 ISO, you can install the ISO on here. It's not just what's on that list. So that was what was nice. And then you click next, it'll tell you all of that. And it's going to set up that virtual machine environment. And I set it up so that there's nothing actually installed on that right now. But that is basically all there is to know about Hyper-V, other than NIC configurations. So that is actually the next part that I will get into, is the actual NIC. Hyper-V is pretty self-explanatory from that point. You click start once you have all your settings. One thing that I thought was interesting is start is not connect. Start is actually to run the service, to run that server, to start that server. You can go into the settings and you can tell it to automatically start. You can go in and do a lot of other things in these settings. In the virtual OS part of it, this is virtual OS / Hyper-V Manager. Because in here you can actually tell it to start virtual machine automatically. When do you want it to stop, shut off if you want that? Where the file's at, checkpoints. If you want to enable it, disable it. What services? Of course, the name. NIC cards. This is once you set up the NIC cards, you can actually go in and add hardware and add more NIC cards. I will go into more detail of that too also. Hard drive. CPU. This may be one of those factors you might want to change because some of the software says you should be really running 2 CPUs, 4 CPUs. A lot of computers nowadays have a lot of CPUs, a lot of processors that you could run a lot of virtual machines if you're using 2 core CPUs, 4 core of CPUs. It's not that bad if you get a 30 core, 48 core, AMD or something of that sort. Something that's really extreme out there, you can run a lot. Memory, a lot of people are putting a lot of memory in nowadays, security. So I did mention now, start actually starts it. Next thing is connect. Connecting it will actually bring up another window, as you can see. In that window, this is actually your OS now running. This is your operating system in the Hyper-V world, in the virtual world. And this is a clean install. So this is the same as you would do a clean install on any computer. It's going to prompt you for your username, your password, wireless network, wireless password, all of those things. If you set that up in those settings, the OS will now prompt you for that. So let me minimize that because that'll come up. So this goes to segment number 2.